Have you ever suffered because of people who behave badly towards you? And how many times have you clashed with toxic people who had disturbed your inner peace? If your answer is yes, then you know what we are talking about. Toxic people are like poisonous shadows that feed on our serenity, on our inner well-being. But at the end of this road full of negativity, a road that seems to have no exit, there is a light that can save us, and that is called salvation. In this Zen story you are about to hear, therefore, you will be able to discover the smartest ways in which to deal with toxic people. Finally, you will be able to learn how to free yourself from the clutches of those who can take away your inner peace with so much negativity. And if you stay until the end of this video, you will have a way to understand how you can free yourself from these toxic people. You will also discover how to transform their negativity into inner strength in order to build a peaceful life full of emotional balance. But before starting with this story of Buddhist wisdom, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to stay updated when we publish new content for your spiritual growth. On the slopes of Mount Fuji, surrounded by an unreal quiet, stood the Buddhist monastery of Kinrinzan, an oasis of peace immersed in the lush forest. Here, the wise monk Benjiro, famous for his wisdom and compassion, welcomed pilgrims every day looking for a spiritual path that would help their personal development. One day, a group of people tired of having to deal with negative friends, colleagues, or family members every day came to the monastery looking for answers. With pain-filled eyes, they begged Benjiro to share his wisdom on how to best deal with these difficult situations. With a welcoming smile, the monk invited them to sit under the shade of an ancient cherry blossom tree. The delicate scent of pink petals mixed with the rustling of leaves, creating an atmosphere of serenity. Dear friends, Benjiro began in a warm and reassuring voice. Life is a path dotted with encounters, some joyful, others painful. Toxic people, like poisonous shadows in our inner garden, can bring negativity and hinder our spiritual path. However, just as a wise gardener tends his garden, we can learn to manage these interactions with intelligence and compassion. While the group of pilgrims nodded their heads and listened attentively, Benjiro continued his valuable lesson by illustrating the first of 20 ways to deal with toxic people. Like a flashlight illuminating the darkness, Benjiro explained, self-awareness allows us to recognize our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors when faced with toxic people. This helps us understand how their actions affect us and make informed decisions about how to react. Imagine a colleague who constantly criticizes your work, making you feel inadequate and frustrated. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, take a moment to reflect on how you feel. Recognize your emotions and try to understand the reasons that trigger them. This way, you can choose a more constructive response, such as asking for specific feedback or calmly explaining your point of view. The need for emotional stability was the second point addressed by the monk. Like a mountain that resists the elements, he stated, emotional stability helps us maintain calm and clarity in the face of negativity. It's not about indifference, but about recognizing that the only element under our control is our response, not the behavior of the person in front of us. Think of a family member who exercises constant control over your life, claiming to decide everything for you. Instead of letting anxiety or anger overwhelm you, focus on staying calm and clear-headed. Don't let his words or actions define your worth or affect your emotional well-being. My father is a very critical man and always expects the best for me. I often feel inadequate and frustrated by his expectations, said one of the pilgrims present at the meeting. I understand your difficulty, replied the elderly monk. Recognizing your emotions is the first step in dealing with them. Try to focus on your strengths and accomplishments rather than your father's criticisms. And remember that your worth is not defined by the opinions of others. After looking everyone present in the eyes, making sure they were following with interest, Benjiro continued his speech. Erecting healthy boundaries is like building a fence around our inner garden, he explained. Choosing carefully who enters our lives allows us to protect our inner peace and invest energy in positive relationships. I remember a friend who often called me late at night to complain about his problems, asking me to always be available to listen to him. Instead of feeling obligated to please him, I learned to assertively say no. So, in circumstances like this, calmly explain that you need time and space for yourself and set clear boundaries for your relationship. Don't be afraid to set limits, to say clearly that you are not always available. If there is an intelligent person on the other side, he will understand. A friend of mine often calls me late at night to complain about her problems. I feel obliged to listen to her, but sometimes it exhausts me and takes away my energy, said one young woman. And Benjiro, smiling, replied, "It's important to be understanding and support friends in difficulty, but it's equally important to take care of yourself. Set clear boundaries about when you are available to listen to her, and gently explain that you need time to yourself. Remember that you are not responsible for other people's problems, but only for your own mental well-being and serenity. Our thoughts are like seeds planted in the garden of the mind," Benjiro stated as he continued the lesson. Feeding doubts and fears fuels toxic weeds, while cultivating positive and resilient thoughts causes inner strength to grow. Imagine for a moment a colleague taking credit for your work, making you feel bitter and frustrated. Instead of letting negative and angry thoughts overwhelm you, focus on your successes and abilities. Recognize your value and remember that your work will be recognized at the right time. Master, how do we detach ourselves from people without appearing cold and insensitive? Asked a man who was listening intently. Detachment is not coldness, Benjiro explained, but the ability to choose where to focus our energy. Like a shield, it protects us from the poison arrows of negativity, allowing us to maintain our inner peace. Think about a family member who constantly criticizes you, making you feel inadequate and insecure. Instead of getting into heated arguments and trying to change his opinion, detach yourself emotionally from the situation. Don't let his words affect your mood and focus on the positive aspects of your life. As the disciples and pilgrims attending the lesson listened with great trepidation, the monk went on to talk about another way to deal with people who make our lives difficult. Our energy is a precious resource, Benjiro stated. Choosing wisely how to use it, avoiding wasting it in useless discussions with toxic people, allows us to nourish our emotional well-being. Think of a neighbor who always complains about the noise you make at home, creating tensions and conflicts. Instead of trying to please him at all costs, focus on establishing a constructive dialogue. Explain your point of view calmly and find compromise solutions that respect the needs of both. Focusing on objectives was another piece of the lesson on which the monk concentrated. Like a lighthouse in the fog, Benjiro explained, goals guide us to what's truly important. Focusing on what we want to achieve in life helps us maintain a long-term perspective and not get distracted by negativity. Try to imagine a colleague trying to sabotage your work, hindering your professional progress. Instead of letting his attitudes demoralize you, focus on your professional goals. Dedicate yourself to your work and demonstrate your value with your results. The facts will speak for you, and you will not need to damage your inner peace by immersing yourself in polemics or sterile discussions with that person. Sharing our difficulties with wise and understanding people is like receiving light on a dark path, Benjiro stated, introducing another important aspect. Their support gives us an outside perspective and strengthens us on our spiritual journey, so don't be afraid to seek support from someone you respect. If, for example, a friend betrays you, making you feel hurt and disappointed. Don't withdraw into yourself and force yourself to suffer in silence. Instead, confide in a trusted friend or family member. Their support and advice will help you overcome this difficult time and understand what to do next. Your approach must be solution-oriented, continued the wise monk. Tackling interactions with toxic people with creativity and flexibility is like playing chess, Benjiro explained. Remember that finding intelligent solutions allows us to transform conflicts into opportunities for growth and maintain our inner peace. Imagine that a boss assigns you unreasonable tasks, creating stress and frustration at work. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, try to find creative solutions. For example, calmly explain your difficulties and propose constructive alternatives that are realistic and mutually beneficial, and watch how things go. Emotional detachment is like a journey to inner liberation, Benjiro stated as he continued his list of ways to deal with toxic people. Learning to separate our emotions from the actions and words of others allows us to avoid being manipulated or dragged into unnecessary conflicts. When a family member or friend constantly criticizes you, making you feel inadequate and insecure, avoid taking their words personally and feeling hurt. Instead, observe their behavior with emotional detachment. Recognize that their criticisms are a reflection of themselves and not of your real value. As the sun began to hide behind the mountains, Benjiro introduced the 11th teaching, practicing compassion and forgiveness. Compassion is like beneficial rain, he explained. Feeding compassion for toxic people, even if they have hurt us, allows us to free ourselves from resentment and find inner peace. When a friend betrays you, for example, instead of feeling anger and resentment, you feel compassion for his behavior. Recognize that he acted on his weaknesses and his inner pain. And remember that forgiving does not mean forgetting, but freeing yourself from the negative weight of resentment. Another essential thing you must do, my dears, is to transform negativity into opportunities for personal and spiritual growth. Like a miner finding golden rock, Benjiro stated, even negative experiences with toxic people can contain valuable life lessons. If a colleague treats you with hostility, creating a tense and unpleasant atmosphere, you should not feel discouraged. Instead, observe his behavior carefully and try to understand the reasons for his attitude, using this experience to develop your patience, your resilience, and your ability to manage difficult relationships. Avoiding getting involved in unnecessary arguments is another way to keep toxic people under control, the monk said. Choosing our battles wisely is like saving precious energy, he explained. Recognizing that some conflicts with toxic people are simply a waste of time allows us to focus our energies on what's truly important. Think of a neighbor who accuses you of false things, creating tensions and misunderstandings. Instead of getting into a heated argument to prove your innocence, calmly remove yourself from the situation. Don't let his accusations affect your peace of mind and focus on other aspects of your life. Practicing the sense of humor, Benjiro continued, is another smart way to deal with these individuals. Like laughter that releases tension, a sense of humor can be a powerful antidote to negativity. Imagine once again a colleague making offensive jokes about you, trying to provoke you and ridicule you. Instead of feeling hurt or angry, respond with a witty and intelligent joke. Your sense of humor will disarm his negativity and demonstrate your inner confidence. At the same time, recognizing our intrinsic value is like discovering a hidden treasure, explained the monk. Remembering our uniqueness and our abilities allows us to face challenges with courage and build healthy and positive relationships. Think, for example, about when a family member compares you to others, making you feel insecure and inadequate. Instead of being influenced by these attitudes, focus on your strengths and the positive events in your life. Remember that your worth is not defined by the opinions of others. but by who you really are and what you can accomplish. The pilgrims continued to listen to their mentor with extreme attention, and some of them were moved by the precious teachings they were hearing. Taking responsibility for your own well-being, continued the elderly monk, is another of the smart ways you must remember to carry with you. Like a captain steering his ship, we are responsible for our own emotional well-being. So, if a person constantly judges and criticizes you, creating a climate of tension and discomfort, you don't have to change your attitude to please them. Instead, on the contrary, learn to assertively communicate your needs and limits. Calmly explain that his words hurt you and that you want to build a friendship based on mutual respect. The disciples, moved by Benjiro's words, nodded gratefully. Each of them had found in his teachings a light that illuminated the path to deal with difficult relationships with toxic people.